"I love you," said the rancher. "Then why didn't you touch me?" whispered the young Apache woman. Thomas had lived on the edge of the desert for as long as he could remember. His ranch was small but sturdy, surrounded by rolling hills and wide stretches of golden grass. He had built most of it himself, from the wooden fences that marked the boundary of his land to the weathered barn where he kept his horses. Life on the ranch was quiet, sometimes too quiet. The wind whispered through the tall grasses, carrying the scent of sage and the distant mountains, and Thomas often felt as though he was the only soul left in that part of the world. He rose early every morning, long before the sun peeked over the horizon. By the time the first rays of sunlight touched the desert floor, Thomas was already checking the fences, feeding the animals and making sure the water troughs were full. His routine was simple but necessary. Without it, the ranch could not survive. Despite the hard work, Thomas found a kind of peace in it. There was no noise, no arguments, no demands, just the land, the sky, and the rhythm of life he had chosen. One morning, as he rode his horse along the northern edge of his property, he noticed movement among the sagebrush. At first, he thought it was a coyote or a fox, but as he drew closer, he saw a figure crouched low to the ground, gathering herbs. The woman's hair was long and dark, falling in waves over her shoulders, and her clothing was simple, blending with the colors of the earth. She moved with careful precision, her hands gentle yet sure as she collected the plants. There was a calmness about her, a natural grace that made Thomas pause. For a moment he watched from a distance, unsure if he should approach. He had seen people pass through the area before, travelers or traders, but something about this woman was different. She seemed connected to the land in a way he had never seen. He noticed the way her fingers brushed over the leaves, the way her eyes scanned the horizon, and he felt a sudden curiosity he could not ignore. Slowly, he nudged his horse forward, careful not to startle her. "Good morning," he said, his voice steady but gentle. The woman looked up, her dark eyes meeting his. For a brief second, neither spoke. There was a silence that felt both strange and familiar, as if they had met in another time or place. Then she nodded slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement but not of fear. "Good morning," she replied, her voice soft but clear, carrying a hint of caution. Thomas dismounted, leaving the reins loose in his hand. He took a step closer, careful not to invade her space. "I didn't mean to startle you," he said. "I was just passing by." She studied him for a moment, then relaxed slightly. "It's all right," she said. "The land is open, and the plants are for everyone who knows how to use them." There was something about the way she spoke, a knowledge of the earth that seemed deep and ancient. Thomas felt a mixture of admiration and awe. "I've lived here a long time," he said, "but I don't know many people who understand the land as you do." The woman tilted her head, considering his words. "I have learned from my family," she said. "From my people, the land gives, but it also teaches. You must listen." Thomas nodded slowly. Her words resonated with him. He had always respected the land, but she spoke of it as if it were alive, as if it had a voice of its own. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of connection, not just to the land, but to another human being who shared his understanding. Days passed, and Thomas found himself thinking about the woman often. He didn't know her name, nor did he know anything about her life beyond these brief encounters. Yet there was a pull he could not ignore, a curiosity that made him want to see her again. One afternoon, he returned to the same spot, hoping to find her there. Sure enough, she was there, kneeling among the herbs, her hands moving with the same careful precision as before. This time, Thomas approached more confidently. "I brought some water," he said, offering a small bottle he had carried in his saddlebag. She looked at him, a faint smile touching her lips. "Thank you," she said. She accepted the bottle and drank slowly, her eyes never leaving his. There was a quiet intimacy in the gesture, a shared understanding that needed no words. Over the next few weeks, their meetings became routine. Thomas would ride to the edge of his ranch each morning, and she would be there, tending to her plants or simply sitting in the sun. They spoke in simple words at first, sharing little details about their lives. Thomas told her about the ranch, the work, the solitude, and she spoke of her people, her family, and the knowledge passed down through generations. Even though they came from different worlds, they found common ground. Both had a deep respect for the land, both understood the silence of the desert, and both carried a quiet strength born of hardship. Their conversations were sometimes hesitant, sometimes awkward, but always genuine. They laughed together when small accidents happened, a spilled basket of herbs, a startled horse, and they shared moments of silence that felt full and comforting. Thomas began to notice small details about her. The way her eyes reflected the sunlight, the subtle gestures of her hands, the patience with which she approached every task. He realized that he looked forward to these encounters more than anything else in his days. There was a warmth in her presence, a lightness that lifted the heaviness he had carried alone for so long. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Thomas and the woman sat together on a large rock overlooking the valley. The air was cool, and the scent of the desert was strong and sweet. They spoke of many things: the stars that would soon appear, the animals that roamed freely, and the small joys of everyday life. At that moment, Thomas felt a stirring in his heart, a feeling he had not known for many years. He wanted to reach out to bridge the distance between them, but he hesitated. He respected her space, her freedom, and her choice. He realized that trust could not be forced. It had to grow naturally, like the plants she so carefully tended. The woman noticed his quiet contemplation. "Do you like it here?" she asked softly. Thomas smiled. "More than anywhere else," he replied. "I feel peaceful, and I feel like I am not completely alone anymore." Her eyes softened and she nodded. "The land has a way of choosing who belongs," she said. "Sometimes it brings people together, even when it seems impossible." As the stars began to appear, one by one, Thomas felt a sense of hope he had not felt in years. He knew that their worlds were different, that their lives were shaped by history and expectation. But for this moment, they were simply two people sharing the quiet beauty of the desert. The first part of their story had begun, not with grand gestures or dramatic events, but with patience, understanding, and the small, steady steps of two hearts finding each other in the vastness of the world. And though neither of them knew what the future held, both felt the undeniable spark of connection, a bond that promised more than mere friendship. In the silence of the desert, under the vast sky and the gentle whisper of the wind, a story was quietly unfolding, one of trust, discovery, and the slow awakening of love. Days turned into weeks, and Thomas and the young Apache woman, whose name he now learned was Naeli, continued to meet at the edge of the ranch. Each encounter felt like a small adventure, a secret shared between them and the wide, endless desert. Thomas found himself riding earlier in the mornings, eager to see her. Naeli, in turn, began to smile more freely when she saw him, the corners of her mouth lifting in a gentle expression that warmed his heart. One morning, Thomas approached cautiously. Naeli was kneeling near a patch of wildflowers that had grown in a small depression between the rocks. The colors of the blossoms, yellow, purple, and soft white, stood out brightly against the sandy soil. She moved carefully, examining each flower, touching the petals lightly as if they carried a story of their own. "Good morning," Thomas said softly, not wanting to frighten her. Naeli looked up and smiled. "Good morning," she replied, her voice calm but full of life. "The flowers are growing well today." Thomas dismounted and walked closer. He had learned that she liked him to observe quietly rather than talk too much while she worked. He watched as she gathered the blossoms carefully, placing them in a small woven basket. Her movements were precise and respectful, almost like a dance with the land itself. Thomas felt a growing admiration for her knowledge and patience. He had never seen anyone treat the earth with such care. "You have a gift," he said finally. "You know the plants so well. You could teach me if you wanted." Naomi paused, tilting her head thoughtfully. "The land teaches those who listen," she said. "I can show you how to listen, but the land will decide if you understand." Thomas chuckled. "I'll try my best." Over the next few days, he did try. Naomi taught him about the herbs she collected, what each one could be used for, which ones were good for teas, and which could heal a cut or soothe a fever. She explained how the desert had a rhythm, how the wind, the sun, and even the clouds spoke in their own language. Thomas listened carefully, learning not only about plants but also about patience, observation, and respect for nature. The lessons were small but meaningful. Sometimes they sat together in silence, listening to the desert sounds, the distant call of a hawk, the whisper of the wind through the grass, the low murmur of the river far below the hills. Thomas realized that he had never truly heard these sounds before. Life on the ranch had been about work and survival, but Naomi taught him that life could also be about noticing, understanding, and appreciating the world around him. As the days passed, their conversations grew deeper. They shared stories about their childhoods, their families, and the hardships they had faced. Thomas spoke of growing up on the ranch, learning to ride horses, mend fences, and survive in a land that was often harsh and unforgiving. Naomi spoke of her people, of her tribe's traditions, and the lessons she had learned from her parents and elders. Despite the differences in their worlds, they found surprising similarities. Both had learned to be strong, to survive, and to respect the land. Both understood solitude and had grown used to relying on themselves. And both had quietly carried the hope of finding someone who could understand them, someone who could see beyond the surface to the heart beneath. One afternoon, Thomas brought a small gift with him, a simple leather pouch filled with dried herbs from his ranch. He handed it to Naomi with a shy smile. "I thought you might like these," he said. Naomi accepted the pouch, examining it carefully. "You thought of me," she said softly. "Thank you." She looked at him, her eyes bright and thoughtful. "It is not just the gift," she added. "It is the thought behind it that matters." Thomas felt a warmth spread through him. Her words touched him deeply. He realized that their connection was growing stronger, not through grand gestures or declarations, but through simple acts of care and attention. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, they walked together along a narrow trail that led to a small hill overlooking the valley. The wind was gentle, carrying the scent of sage and wildflowers. Thomas noticed how the light caught Naomi's hair, making it shimmer like dark silk in the fading sunlight. They sat on a large rock, watching the shadows stretch across the desert. Thomas felt a mix of emotions, joy, admiration, and a growing sense of something deeper that he could not yet name. Naomi seemed to sense it too, for she reached out and lightly touched his hand. The contact was brief, tentative, but it sent a shiver through him. "Thomas," she said softly, "the world is not always kind to people like us." "I know," he replied, "but right now here it is kind. We can just be together for a little while." Naomi nodded, her fingers lingering on his hand for a moment longer. "Yes," she whispered, "for now." As they sat in silence, Thomas felt a growing courage within him. He wanted to express what he felt, but he also wanted to respect Naomi's pace. He understood that trust could not be forced, it had to grow naturally. Days continued in this way, quiet mornings of work and lessons, afternoons of shared stories and laughter, evenings of companionship beneath the wide desert sky. Thomas began to notice how his thoughts often drifted to Naomi when he was alone on the ranch. He would remember the way she tilted her head when she was thinking, the gentle precision of her hands, the quiet strength in her eyes. He realized that he had never felt this way about anyone before. Naomi, too, found herself thinking of Thomas when she returned to her tribe's village. She spoke little of him to her family, for she knew that their worlds were not ready to accept such a connection. Yet, in her heart, she felt a growing affection and trust. She admired his patience, his willingness to learn, and the kindness that shone through in his actions. One evening, after a long day of tending the ranch, Thomas and Naeli sat together by the small river that ran through the valley. The water sparkled in the fading light, and the sound of it flowing over the rocks was soothing. Thomas had brought some bread and dried fruit, and they shared a simple meal together. As they ate, Thomas spoke quietly. "Naeli, I feel different when I am with you. I cannot explain it, but being here with you makes the day feel brighter, the land feel alive." Naeli looked at him, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset. "I feel it too," she admitted. "But we must be careful. Our lives, they are not meant to be the same. Yet somehow, we find each other here in this place, and it feels right." Thomas nodded, understanding the unspoken words between them. They were two people from different worlds, facing challenges they could not yet overcome. But in this moment, their connection was real and it mattered. As darkness fell, they stayed by the river, watching the stars appear one by one. The sky was a canvas of silver light, and the desert around them seemed peaceful and alive. They spoke little, letting the silence carry their thoughts and feelings. Each knew that these moments were precious, fragile, and rare. That night, as Thomas returned to his cabin, he felt a mixture of hope and longing. He knew that the bond between him and Naeli was growing stronger, but he also understood that love alone could not overcome the challenges of the world around them. Still, he was determined to cherish every moment, to respect her, and to continue learning from her. Naeli, walking back to her village, felt the same. She held onto the memory of their shared day, the gentle touch of his hand, the quiet conversations, and the warmth of his presence. She knew that their connection was special, something that transcended the ordinary. Yet she also knew that patience and careful steps were necessary if it were to endure. The days that followed were filled with a delicate balance of work, learning, and companionship. Thomas and Naeli continued their routine, each encounter strengthening their bond. They laughed, they learned, and they shared the quiet beauty of the desert. And in these small, meaningful moments, the beginnings of love and trust began to take root, slowly, gently, and with the promise of something deeper to come. In the quiet of the desert, beneath the endless sky, Thomas and Naeli were discovering not only each other, but also a new way to see the world. They were learning that connection could grow even in the harshest landscapes, that understanding could bridge differences, and that the heart often knows its path long before the mind can follow. The weeks had turned into months, and the connection between Thomas and Naeli had grown stronger with each passing day. Their meetings had become more than routine. They were the heartbeat of both their lives. Every morning, Thomas rode to the edge of his ranch with a sense of anticipation he had not felt in years. Naeli would be waiting, quietly tending to her herbs or observing the land with a thoughtful gaze. This day was different. The air was warm, and a soft breeze carried the scent of wild sage and dry earth. Thomas rode slowly, noticing the way the sunlight danced on the hills and the distant mountains that seemed to rise endlessly into the sky. He felt a quiet excitement, a mixture of joy and nervousness. Today, he had decided he would speak from the heart. When he arrived, Naeli was already there, kneeling near a patch of desert flowers that had begun to bloom in the early spring. She looked up as he approached, her dark eyes bright and curious. There was a soft smile on her lips, and Thomas felt his chest tighten. "Good morning," she said, her voice carrying a warmth that made him feel at home. "Good morning," Thomas replied, dismounting carefully. He held the reins loosely in his hand, trying to steady the nervousness that had built up inside him. I wanted to talk to you today," he said finally. Naeli tilted her head, curious. "About what?" she asked softly, still tending to the plants. Thomas took a deep breath. "About us. About how I feel." Naomi paused, looking up at him with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Her hands rested lightly on the soil, the basket of herbs at her side. "Go on," she said, her voice calm but inviting. I love you, Naomi," Thomas said, the words finally leaving his lips. They felt heavy, powerful, and yet fragile all at once. "I don't know when it happened exactly, or how, but every time I'm near you, I feel complete. I feel like I've found something I didn't even know I was looking for." Naomi's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment the desert around them seemed to hold its breath. She was silent, considering his words carefully. Finally she spoke, her voice low and hesitant. "Then why didn't you touch me?" Thomas blinked, taken aback. Her words were not a question of judgment but of curiosity and honesty. She looked at him, searching his eyes, trying to understand his heart. Thomas knelt beside her, careful not to rush, careful not to frighten her. "Naomi," he said softly, "I wanted to, I do, but I also wanted to respect you. I didn't want to make you feel rushed, or uncomfortable, or as if you had no choice. I want everything between us to be real, not just a moment of desire." Naomi studied his face, her dark eyes reflecting a mix of emotions: surprise, relief, and something deeper, trust. You are different from others," she said quietly. "Many men would not wait, would not consider what I feel. You see me." Thomas reached out, gently touching her hand, careful to let her guide the gesture. She did not pull away. Instead, her fingers curled slightly around his, a silent acknowledgement of their shared bond. For a moment, they simply sat there, holding hands, listening to the soft rustle of the desert wind and the distant cry of a hawk. "I have wanted this," Thomas said, his voice low. "I have wanted to be close to you, but I needed to know it was right for you too. I wanted to earn your trust, not take it." Naomi's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. "You have earned it," she said softly. "But you must understand, there are parts of me that are not free. My people, my family, they would not understand, and I cannot ignore that." Thomas nodded slowly, understanding the weight of her words. He had known from the beginning that their connection existed in a fragile space, a world between theirs that was not yet ready to accept them fully. "I know," he said, "and I will not ask you to choose me over your people. I only ask that we continue here, where we can be together safely." They remained there for a long time, talking quietly, sharing their thoughts, fears, and hopes. Thomas learned more about Naomi's tribe, their customs, and the lessons she had learned from her elders. Naomi discovered Thomas's deepest memories of his childhood, the struggles of life on the ranch, and the quiet loneliness that had shaped him. Each story shared was a thread weaving them closer together, binding their hearts in a way neither of them could deny. As the afternoon sun began to sink behind the mountains, Thomas suggested they walk along a small trail that led to a rocky outcrop overlooking the valley. Naomi agreed, and they walked side by side, their hands brushing occasionally but never forcing contact. There was a delicate tension in the air, a mix of longing and patience, desire and restraint. When they reached the top, they sat together on a large flat rock, looking down at the valley below. The desert stretched endlessly, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. Thomas felt a surge of emotion, a longing to express what words could not fully capture. "Naomi," he said softly, turning to face her, "being with you, it makes everything else fade away. The ranch, the loneliness, the work, none of it matters when I'm here with you." Naomi's eyes glistened in the fading light. She reached out again, this time resting her hand on his arm, a gentle but deliberate touch. "Thomas, I feel the same," she admitted, "but we must be careful. Our world, it does not make this easy." Thomas nodded, understanding the unspoken warning. He did not push, did not insist. Instead, he leaned slightly closer, resting his forehead against hers. It was a small gesture, intimate yet respectful, filled with the promise of something more without forcing it. Naomi did not pull away. Instead, she closed her eyes, allowing the connection to deepen in the quiet of the desert evening. As darkness fell and the first stars appeared in the sky, they remained on the rock, side by side, talking softly and occasionally laughing at small, shared jokes. The bond between them was no longer just curiosity or admiration. It had grown into something deeper, a tender intimacy that neither could deny. Yet, even in this moment of closeness, the challenges they faced were never far from their minds. Naomi thought of her tribe, the traditions that shaped her life, and the expectations that could never be ignored. Thomas thought of the ranch, the isolation, and the judgments of others who might never understand their connection. But in spite of all that, they chose to be present, to cherish the moments they had together, and to build trust carefully, patiently, and with respect. One evening, after returning from the ranch, Thomas found himself sitting by the fireplace, replaying their conversations in his mind. He realized that love, he thought, was not just a feeling, it was patience, respect, and understanding. It was choosing to wait, to listen, and to honor the other person's heart above your own desires. Naomi, lying in her small tent in the village, thought about Thomas in the same way. She held his words close, the gentle way he spoke, the care he showed, and the honesty in his eyes. She knew that trust was fragile, yet it was growing between them, rooted in patience and mutual respect. She felt a sense of hope she had not felt in a long time, a belief that love could exist even in a world that was often harsh and unforgiving. Days continued in this delicate balance. They worked, learned, and explored the land together. Thomas tried his hand at some of Naomi's herbal remedies, fumbling at first but learning slowly with her guidance. Naomi shared stories of her people's history, their connection to the land, and the wisdom passed down through generations. Each lesson, each shared moment, strengthened their bond and deepened their understanding of each other. The first time Thomas gently touched Naomi's hand in trust, it was a turning point. It was not just a touch. It was an acknowledgement of mutual respect, a promise to honor her pace, and a recognition of the feelings they both held. Naomi responded with a soft smile and a quiet affirmation, showing that she was ready to allow intimacy, carefully and deliberately, to grow between them. By the end of part 3, the stage was set for a turning point in their story. Thomas had confessed his love, Naomi had acknowledged her feelings, and both had learned the importance of patience, trust, and respect. The emotional tension was high, but their bond had become unshakable, built on understanding, shared experiences, and the quiet beauty of the desert around them. In the vast openness of the land, under the endless sky and the gentle whisper of the wind, Thomas and Naomi had discovered something rare and precious, a love that required no rushing, no demands, only care, attention, and the courage to let it grow naturally. The early morning. Sun cast long shadows across the desert, painting the landscape in soft gold and pink. Thomas rose before the light as he always did, his mind heavy with thoughts of Naomi. The days had been filled with quiet joy, learning, and shared moments, but a sense of unease had begun to creep into his heart. He had felt it for a while, the knowledge that their world was fragile, that the bond he and Naomi shared existed in a delicate balance easily disrupted by forces beyond their control. That day, Thomas noticed a group of men riding across the distant hills. They were strangers, rough-looking and hurried, moving with purpose. Something in their demeanor unsettled him. The desert was vast, but news traveled quickly, and Thomas had learned to read the signs of trouble long before it arrived at his doorstep. He mounted his horse, riding cautiously toward the men, his mind already calculating the potential danger. Meanwhile, Naomi was gathering herbs near the river when she sensed a disturbance. The subtle sounds of the desert, the rustling of the wind, the movement of birds, told her that something was not right. She looked up and saw Thomas approaching at a distance, his expression tense. She hurried to meet him, her heart quickening with concern. "Thomas, what is it?" she asked, her voice anxious but steady. "They are outlaws," Thomas said, motioning toward the distant riders. "I don't know what they want yet, but we need to be careful. They might come toward the ranch." Naomi's eyes widened and she instinctively stepped closer to Thomas. The quiet moments of intimacy and trust they had shared seemed fragile in the face of the sudden threat. "What should we do?" she asked, her voice low. Thomas took a deep breath. "We need to prepare. I'll go back to the ranch and make sure everything is secure. You should return to your village. It's safer there." Naomi hesitated, torn between staying with Thomas and following his advice. She wanted to help, to be by his side, but she also knew the danger he described was real. "I will be careful," she promised, "but I will come back as soon as it is safe." Thomas nodded, understanding the courage in her words. "Promise me you will leave now," he said firmly. "I cannot protect you if you stay here." With a heavy heart, Naomi turned and made her way back toward her village, her mind filled with worry for Thomas and the ranch. She glanced back once, seeing him ride toward the distant hills with determination and concern etched on his face. The sight filled her with both admiration and fear, knowing that their time together was at risk. Thomas arrived at the ranch to find the fences in good condition, but his heart still raced with tension. The outlaws were moving closer, and he knew they would not hesitate to cause harm if given the chance. He gathered the tools and weapons he had, preparing for a confrontation he hoped could be avoided. The ranch that had been his sanctuary now felt vulnerable, its isolation making it a target. As the sun climbed higher, the outlaws rode closer. Their intentions became clear when they demanded supplies and threatened the animals. Thomas stood his ground, his voice steady but firm. "You will not take what is not yours," he said. "Leave now, and no one will be harmed." The men laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed across the desert. "We'll take what we want," one of them sneered. "And if you resist, you'll regret it." Thomas's mind raced. He had faced challenges before, but this was different. He was not just protecting himself. He was protecting the land, the animals, and the life he had built. He fought with courage and strategy, using his knowledge of the terrain and the ranch to his advantage. The outlaws were persistent, but Thomas's determination and skill began to turn the tide. Meanwhile, Naomi waited in her village, her thoughts consumed with worry. She could do nothing but hope that Thomas would succeed, that the bond they shared would not be destroyed by the chaos unfolding miles away. She prayed quietly to the spirits of the land, seeking guidance and protection for the man she had come to care for deeply. The confrontation at the ranch lasted for hours. Thomas defended his home with every ounce of strength he possessed, using both his mind and body to outmaneuver the outlaws. By the end of the day, they had been driven away, but the victory was bittersweet. The ranch had suffered minor damage, and Thomas knew that the threat could return. More importantly, he felt the weight of isolation and the reminder that his connection with Naomi was vulnerable to forces he could not control. That evening, Thomas rode toward the river, hoping to find Naomi and reassure her that he was safe. When he arrived, he found her waiting, her expression a mixture of relief and concern. They embraced, the tension of the day melting slightly in the warmth of their connection. "You're safe," Naomi whispered, holding him tightly. "I was so worried." "I am," Thomas replied, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "But we cannot pretend that the world will always allow us to be together without challenges. We must be careful, Naomi. The bond we share is precious, but it is fragile." Naomi nodded, understanding the truth in his words. "I know," she said softly. "But even if the world is against us, I will not forget what we share. I will wait, and I will be here when it is safe." Thomas held her close, feeling the depth of her commitment and the strength of her heart. He realized that their connection was not just about love. It was about courage, patience, and resilience. They had discovered something rare, something worth protecting, even in the face of danger and uncertainty. Days passed, and Thomas worked tirelessly to repair the ranch and ensure its safety. Naeli visited when she could, though always with caution, aware of the lingering threats that could disrupt their lives. Each meeting was filled with quiet joy, laughter, and shared moments, but the shadow of the recent danger lingered, reminding them that their world was not entirely their own. One afternoon, Thomas and Naeli sat together on a hill overlooking the valley. The wind was warm, carrying the scent of wildflowers and sage. Thomas took a deep breath, his mind heavy with thought. "Naeli," he said, "we must consider our future carefully. The world around us is not kind, and our connection, as strong as it is, can be tested by forces beyond our control." Naeli's eyes softened, and she reached out, placing her hand gently on his arm. "I understand," she said. "But even in the face of challenges, even if we are apart for a time, the bond we share cannot be taken from us. It is a part of who we are." Thomas nodded, feeling the truth of her words. "Yes," he said, "but we must be patient. We cannot rush what we have, no matter how much we wish we could." Their time together was now marked by a delicate balance of presence and caution. Every shared moment was treasured, every conversation filled with meaning. They laughed, shared stories, and worked together on small tasks, but always with the awareness that the world outside their sanctuary could intrude at any moment. Then came the day when Naeli's tribe discovered the secret of their meetings. She had always known this was a possibility, a reality they could not avoid forever. Her elders warned her that her safety and the honor of her family depended on her ceasing contact with Thomas. Naeli felt torn, her heart aching at the thought of leaving him. But she knew the wisdom of her people could not be ignored. She met Thomas by the river one last time before she returned fully to her tribe. The air was warm, the water sparkling in the sunlight. Thomas sensed the change immediately, the weight in her eyes and the hesitation in her voice. "Thomas," she said softly, "I must go. My people, they do not approve, and I must respect them. I cannot be here openly anymore." Thomas felt a pang of sorrow but also understanding. He took her hands in his, holding them gently. "I know, Naeli," he said. "I understand. Our bond, it is strong, but we must survive in the world we have. We cannot let our love endanger you or me." Tears welled in Naeli's eyes. "I will never forget you," she whispered. "And I will carry our memories with me always." Thomas pulled her close for a brief embrace, careful to honor the respect and boundaries that had always defined their connection. "And I will carry you," he said quietly. "Always." With a final glance, Naeli turned and walked toward her village, leaving Thomas alone by the river. The desert stretched endlessly around him, both comforting and lonely, filled with memories of their shared time and the knowledge that life could be both beautiful and cruel. That night Thomas sat by the fire in his cabin, thinking of Naeli. The world had tested their bond, and though they were apart, the love and trust they had built remained alive in their hearts. He knew that separation was painful, but he also understood that true connection, rooted in patience, respect, and shared experience, could survive even the most difficult challenges. Years had passed since the last time Thomas and Naeli had stood together by the river. The desert, vast and unchanging in many ways, had shifted subtly over time, with the seasons shaping its landscape, bringing new colors, new growth, and new life. Thomas had grown older, his hair streaked with silver and his hands calloused from years of hard work on the ranch. The barn and fences were still sturdy, though worn with the passage of time. He had continued to live a life of quiet perseverance, tending to his animals and the land he loved, but the memory of Naeli never left him. Naeli, too, had carried the memory of Thomas in her heart. Life with her tribe had been full and meaningful, yet her thoughts often wandered to the man who had taught her to see the world through his eyes, the man who had listened and respected her with such care. She had grown into her role within her people, carrying forward the traditions and wisdom of her ancestors, but she had also held on to the lessons of patience, love, and understanding that Thomas had shown her. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped toward the horizon and painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Thomas rowed toward the river. It had been years since he had been there alone, and the sight of the water sparkling in the sunlight brought back memories of the days spent with Naeli. He dismounted and walked slowly along the bank, letting the familiar scent of sage and earth fill his senses. The river, quiet and steady, seemed to reflect both the constancy of the land and the passage of time. As he walked, he heard the soft sound of footsteps approaching. He turned and froze for a moment, his heart skipping a beat. There, standing a few feet away, was Naeli. She looked older, her features carrying the grace and strength of the years, yet her dark eyes were the same, deep, wise, and filled with recognition. "Naeli," Thomas said softly, his voice carrying both awe and emotion. "Thomas," she replied, her voice calm yet full of feeling. "It has been a long time." They walked toward each other slowly, each step measured, as if both were unsure if the other would still be the same person they remembered. When they finally met, they embraced, a long, quiet hug that spoke more than words ever could. There was no rush, no urgency, just the warmth and comfort of familiarity, the bond of shared history, and the quiet acknowledgement of all they had endured. "I have missed you," Thomas said after a moment, his voice low and full of sincerity. "Every day. I never stopped thinking about you." Naeli smiled softly, placing her hand on his cheek. "And I have missed you," she said. "Even when life demanded I be apart, you were always with me, in my thoughts, in my heart. Our bond, it was never broken." They sat together on a flat rock by the river, watching the water flow gently. The sound was soothing, a reminder of the days they had spent here long ago. Thomas noticed the lines of experience on Naeli's face, the strength in her posture, and the wisdom in her eyes. She had grown in ways he could not have imagined, and yet the essence of her, the grace, patience, and courage, remained unchanged. "I wanted to see you again," Thomas said quietly. "To know that after all these years the world has not taken what we shared from us." Naeli nodded. "Life has changed us," she said. "We have both grown, learned, and faced challenges, but the heart remembers what is true, and what we shared, it was true." They spoke for hours, sharing stories of the years that had passed. Thomas told her of the ranch, the seasons, the animals, and the quiet triumphs and struggles of his life. Naeli shared tales of her tribe, the lessons she had learned, and the ways she had carried forward the wisdom of her people. Each story brought them closer, bridging the gap of years with laughter, understanding, and shared reflection. As the sun began to set, the sky turning a deep shade of orange, Thomas reached out, taking Naeli's hand gently in his own. "Do you remember," he asked softly, "the first day we met here by the river? How cautious we were, how unsure of each other." Naeli's eyes softened, a gentle smile touching her lips. "I remember," she said. "And yet even then there was something that drew us together, even when the world said we should not be. It has never left me." Thomas nodded, feeling the truth of her words deep in his chest. "We have been apart, but we never really were," he said. "The bond we share, it has endured everything." For a while, they simply sat in silence, listening to the river, watching the shadows lengthen across the valley. The world around them had changed, yet this place remained a sanctuary, a witness to the love, respect, and trust they had built together. The years had not diminished their connection. If anything, it had deepened it, tempered by patience, endurance, and understanding. Naeli leaned her head against Thomas's shoulder, a gesture both simple and profound. "We cannot undo the years we spent apart," she said softly, "but we can honor what we have now. This is enough." Thomas felt a wave of gratitude and peace wash over him. "Yes," he said. "This is more than enough. It is what we always wanted, time together here, free from judgment and fear. We have earned this moment." As night fell, the stars began to emerge, one by one, filling the sky with silver light. They lay back on the rock, side by side, gazing upward at the vastness above. The Milky Way stretched across the heavens, and the quiet of the desert surrounded them. In that moment, neither spoke, for words were unnecessary. The presence of each other, the shared history, and the enduring connection said everything. Over the next days, Thomas and Naeli explored the familiar paths of the river, the hills, and the valley together. They walked through the desert as they had long ago, sharing laughter, quiet conversations, and small gestures of care. Every step, every glance carried the weight of years spent apart, the joy of reunion, and the knowledge that their bond had survived despite all obstacles. They spoke of the future cautiously, aware that life's challenges still existed, but also recognizing that they had the wisdom, patience, and resilience to navigate it together. They made no promises of grand gestures or impossible feats, only the commitment to cherish each day, to respect each other, and to honor the love that had endured through time and distance. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the desert was bathed in golden light, Thomas turned to Naeli and said softly, "We may not be able to change the world, Naeli, but we can choose how we live within it. And as long as we have each other, we have everything that matters." Naeli smiled, her eyes reflecting the last light of the setting sun. "Yes," she said, "we have each other, and that is enough, always enough." They sat together in silence, letting the world around them fade into the background. The river flowed, the wind whispered through the grass, and the stars began to shimmer in the sky. In that quiet, timeless moment, Thomas and Naeli understood that love was not measured by time, distance, or obstacles. It was measured by patience, respect, and the courage to endure. Years of longing, separation, and trials had led to this, an understanding that their connection was eternal, rooted in the shared experiences, trust, and unwavering care they had for one another. And though the world beyond the desert continued with its challenges and uncertainties, in this place, with each other, they had found a lasting peace. As night fully descended, they sat close together, hands entwined, watching the stars above. The desert stretched endlessly around them, a silent witness to their enduring love. They knew that life would continue to test them in small ways, but the foundation they had built was unshakable. The lessons of patience, respect, and understanding had guided them, and now the years of endurance had brought them back to one another. And so, in the quiet of the desert, under the vast expanse of the night sky, Thomas and Naeli found a love that had survived time, distance, and the world's challenges. It was a love that did not need grand declarations or dramatic gestures, just presence, care, and the quiet knowledge that some connections, once found, are never truly lost. In the end, their story was not about the years they spent apart, nor the obstacles they faced. It was about the moments of understanding, trust, and tenderness that endured, shaping their lives and leaving an imprint on their hearts that could never fade. As they sat together side by side under the endless sky, Thomas whispered softly, "I am glad we found each other again." Naeli smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. "And I am glad too," she said. "Always." The desert around them seemed to hold its breath, witnessing a love that had survived everything, a love that was quiet, enduring, and true. And in that moment, Thomas and Naeli knew that some stories, though tested by time and circumstance, are meant to last forever.